Has Twitter reached its peak? Reads the headline of a Guardian piece in 2010. Twitter has 75 million users, the piece reported, with a large percentage of accounts being inactive. The report continues to pose a number of questions. Is Twitter a microblogging service where only marketing people tweet to each other? Was it overhyped? How relevant is it anyway? It seems such questions were a little premature. Twitter now boasts some 313 million users, according to its own website, and it has without doubt fundamentally changed the way that news is both generated and circulated. Back when Twitter was founded, in 2006, according to Socialnomics' piece, The History of Twitter, it began as another microblogging platform created by programmers who worked at the podcasting company Odeo in San Francisco, California. As The Telegraph reported in its piece, Twitter Turns 10, the microblogging service has become an integral, some might say unavoidable, feature of millions of lives. It took a while for Twitter to become the ubiquitous site it is today, but there were early signs of what it would become. In 2009, in what Twitter itself lists as one of its milestones, a US plane crashed into the New York's Hudson River. The first photo appeared on Twitter, breaking the news before the traditional media. According to this Telegraph article, Twitter users broke the news of the incident around 15 minutes before the mainstream media alerted viewers and readers to the crash. In 2011, Twitter reported in its blog piece, 100 Million Voices, that it had reached that many monthly active members. But, much more significant and unplanned, it soon also played a prominent role in a number of uprisings, several of which toppled governments. Wired's piece, Social Media Sparked, Accelerated Egypt's Revolutionary Fire, asks, did social media like Facebook and Twitter cause the revolution? No, but these tools did speed up the process by helping to organise the revolutionaries, transmit their message to the world, and galvanise international support. While Facebook was central to the organising of protests, Twitter, the piece goes on, functioned to help get the message out to the broader world. In Tunisia, CNN reported in early January 2011, organised dissent in the streets is rarely tolerated, making protests rare. Those that had erupted that month, in the report's words, were all the more unusual because they were being organised and supported through online networks centred on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter was also at the centre of the conversation following the London riots in August of the same year. As The Guardian reported in its piece, Twitter and the Riots, How the News Spread, news that a protest over the police shooting of Mark Duggan had descended into violence was being passed along a chain of thousands of Twitter users before journalists had even arrived at the scene. In its piece, London Riots, Met Chief Tim Godwin considered shutting off Twitter, The Telegraph reported that Keith Vaz, the Home Affairs Committee chair, said social media had allowed people to turn up at very short notice to demonstrate and riot. Twitter can cause a moral panic on the conservative side, that it can be used to outsmart the authorities in crisis situations. At the same time, at least potentially, it could help those powers counterattack. Twitter, after all, in its nature, seems to lend itself to government snooping. In its public statements, Twitter has committed itself against this, as the Inquirer makes clear in this story. Twitter reaffirms anti-surveillance stance and tells devs to stop making spy tools. Unsurprisingly, there's reason to be suspicious of such claims. The Washington Post reports that Twitter sent feeds that help police track minorities in Ferguson and Baltimore. The events of 2011 were only the beginning of Twitter's successful place at the centre of global news. Because, unlike the traditional media, it doesn't rely on journalists being in the right place at the right time, but can provide instantaneous citizen journalism. For instance, during the riots, The Guardian reported, with disorder taking place over such a huge area simultaneously, and outlets such as the BBC and Sky sometimes being forced to pull out their crews, tweeted reports from citizens on the ground proved immensely valuable. In another article, The Guardian tells that it was Twitter that told the world the news of the Boston bombing in 2013. In the 10 minutes after the explosions, their piece describes, Twitter had the only first-hand accounts of the tragedy in real time. The piece continues the list of stories Twitter has beaten journalists to. SEAL Team 6 killing Osama bin Laden broke on Twitter, along with the death of former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. There is, then, certainly some credibility to the New York Times claim in its piece, Social Media's Globe-Shaking Power, that social networks are helping to fundamentally rewire human society. They have subsumed and gutted mainstream media. They have undone traditional political advantages like fundraising and access to advertising, and they are destabilising and replacing old-line institutions and established ways of doing things, including political parties. This is reminiscent of the claims made back in 2011 around the Arab uprisings, but now with one crucial difference. What many failed to consider back then is that the opportunities for organising on social media really are democratic, which means anyone, including the far right and extremists, can use them effectively if they learn how to. For instance, Islamic State's success using Twitter is well documented. Independent Journal Review cites a study in its piece how ISIS made Twitter one of its main recruiting tools, which estimates that ISIS have over 46,000 Twitter accounts, and goes on to recount how ISIS sympathisers hacked into the official Twitter account of the US Central Command. In response, Twitter has attempted to crack down on their use of its site. According to The Guardian's piece, Twitter deletes 125,000 ISIS accounts and expands anti-terror teams. Despite these efforts, ISIS' success using Twitter is clear, as documented in The Atlantic's article, How ISIS Games Twitter, that reports ISIS coding a Twitter app that hundreds of users have signed up for, and is just one way ISIS games Twitter to magnify its message. Another Atlantic article titled War Goes Viral charts the social media success of ISIS. Social media has empowered ISIS recruiting, helping the group draw at least 30,000 foreign fighters from some 100 countries to the battlefields of Syria and Iraq. It has aided the seeding of new franchises in places ranging from Libya and Afghanistan to Nigeria and Bangladesh. It was the vehicle ISIS used to declare war on the United States. The execution of the American journalist James Foley was deliberately choreographed for viral distribution, and it is how the group has inspired acts of terror on 5 continents. But in contradiction to the claims of some that ISIS is better at social media or more Twitter savvy, using technology in innovative and radically new ways, their techniques are in fact all too familiar. As the War Goes Viral article puts it, in a strikingly perspicacious observation, strip away the religious claims and the on-camera killings, and the ISIS online playbook looks much like any of the dozens of social media marketing how-tos circulated by consultants. The principles that have guided the Islamic State's viral success are the same ones used to publicise a new Taylor Swift album or the latest Star Wars movie. They are out there for anyone to copy. And they aren't the only ones to have taken note of the playbooks. Donald Trump's use of social media has long made headlines and was crucial to his success in the US presidential race, which was, of course, the point, as The Guardian makes clear in its piece, Trump versus the Media. Trump's seemingly off-piste Twitter strategy was, among other things, a calculated media strategy. While Clinton wasted time with television adverts and carefully choreographed press releases, Trump's Twitter feed acted not only as a powerful megaphone channeling his voice directly to his followers — he had 13 million of them on Twitter on Election Day, as well as 12 million on Facebook — it also served as a news script for the cable channels. Trump would tweet out his latest offensive or aggressive tweet, often in the early hours of the morning, and TV news editors arriving at their desks would pick it up and turn it into ratings-friendly headlines that would then go on to dominate the rest of the 24-hour news cycle. As BuzzFeed's piece, How Donald Trump Owns the Old Media and the New Media explains, the rise of Trump points to something that those of us who have spent a long time fighting about the relative importance of TV and new media to politics didn't quite anticipate. That rather than being at war with one another, the new medium and the old are locked in an awkward embrace. It's now common for journalists to quote extensively from Twitter feeds. Without corroboration, this becomes degraded journalism, news so freewheelingly sourced that it gives a highly skewed impression of events, denuded of context. Everyone on Twitter is talking about it, to quote the title of a Guardian opinion piece, is not the same as everyone is talking about it. Hand-wringing notwithstanding, Twitter is now indispensable to journalists, influencers, celebrities and companies, and as a result has never struggled to make money. With promoted tweets, advertisement and partnerships, it easily turns a profit. But it is running into difficulties. Compared with its competitors, Twitter is not performing well. As the Financial Times points out in its piece, Twitter's still struggling a year after Jack Dorsey came back. Twitter has about 136 million daily active users, fewer than Snapchat's 150 million, despite the site being about half the age of Twitter. The The daily active user number is far less than half Facebook-owned Instagram's 300 million and represents about 12% of Facebook's daily user base, and it is not growing. So far, the piece notes, worries about Twitter's user growth have not hit revenues, but given that new users are less active than the older audience and therefore are likely to view fewer advertisements, this state of affairs is unlikely to last for long. There are rumours that Twitter could be sold. According to the Financial Times' piece, shares have risen more than 30% since Microsoft bought LinkedIn for $26 billion in mid-June, as people speculated whether Twitter could be a suitable purchase for a larger technology company. Twitter is now an essential part of the news cycle, with a global influence, and the potential to protest those in power, as in the Arab uprisings, to reap chaos, as with ISIS, and to be harnessed by those seeking power, as with Donald Trump. What solutions its owners might come up with to solve its growth problem are impossible to predict, but the platform's extraordinary growth and even more extraordinary influence suggests that in some form or other, its rapid, brief, pithy one-liners, links, observations and provocations are not going anywhere.